Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Is the Flash movie as good as Warner Brothers says it is? Let's say, for argument's sake, that it's badly reviewed and it, flops in the global box office. A lot of people are going to end up with egg on their faces. James Gunn saying this is one of the best superhero movies he's ever seen. So if this movie isn't one of the best superhero movies he's ever seen and he's lying, he's going to be memed, and his future as co-CEO of DC Studios is in tatters. You can't be putting your reputation on the line for a movie that you had nothing to do with. So if this is a bad movie, I don't think that it is, and I think James Gunn is being genuine about it being one of the best superhero movies he's ever seen. But let's just say it's a bad superhero movie, the worst ever made. What would motivate them in lying about it? This film cost a hell of a lot of money to make, so it's very important to Warner Brothers Discovery that this works. They've had to do something that's stuck in their gut and, bring in Ezra Miller, calm down Ezra Miller, sort the Ezra Miller situation out. And congratulations to David Zaslav, Adby and DeLuca, for getting Miller in line. So they've had to do all of that and, pretend they're supporting Ezra Miller. So that's something that's stuck in their craw, and I can tell you that officially. So there's a lot riding in this movie. Not only have they invested a lot of money in this movie, they need this movie to make top dollar because Warner Brothers are $3 billion in debt and they need to raise $3 billion. They've raised some of that money already. And by the way, Disney are more under debt than Warner Brothers Discovery. The only reason you don't know about it is because Warner Brothers Discovery were involved with a merger. When you're involved with a merger, you've got to declare everything publicly via Wall Street and the media. That's why they need to raise $3 billion in a hurry. So I don't think that the Flash movie is bad. I think it's great. I think they're right to be so overly confident about it, but when you're so publicly overconfident about something and confident about a project, you better get success. Because success or failure will deem whether this is a good movie or not. This is the way the public see things today. They don't care if the film's actually good or bad. They'll look at the box office. They'll see the Rotten Tomato ratios by the fans and by verified critics, and that's how they'll judge if it's good or bad. It's not fair, but that's the way it is. Man of Steel is deemed by the mainstream audience as a bad movie because it's got a low Rotten Tomato score and it didn't even make $700 million at the global box office. Batman vs Superman is viewed as a bomb of a movie by the general audience because of its Rotten Tomato ratios and its global box office, which isn't that bad, by the way. $850 million isn't bad at all, but for a Batman and Superman movie and what the studio wanted for it, ultimately, it's not the box office the studio wanted, but it's deemed as a failure. It's not a failure. But it's all about Rotten Tomatoes these days. It's all about your box office. If your CBM is not making at least $1 billion, some fans will see it as a failure. Snyder fans trying to put out the fake propaganda that the Batman at $750 million final global box office is a flop. It's not. It didn't even cost $100 million to make. So it's a sensational result, especially during the COVID pandemic and shutdowns of movie theaters as well. So that was a great result for Warner Brothers Discovery and Matt Reeves as well. So that was a great result. But, $1 billion seems to be the magic number these days. So Shazam! Fury of the Gods will be deemed as a failure. If I enjoy a film, don't care about anything else. There's many films I've enjoyed that didn't make a lot of money, that flopped at the box office. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Last Action Hero. Love it. But it was a flop. Masters of the Universe, starring Frank Langella as Skeletor. Brilliant performance, loved the movie. It was successful for me because I enjoyed it. So I don't, look, as a DC fan, I want these things to, have smoke blowing up their backsides. I want everyone to say every DC project that's released is the bestest ever. I want it to have the best Rotten Tomato ratio. I want it to have the best box office. Of course I do. There's no point me saying anything else. As a fan of DC, and when you're a fan of something, it's very, very difficult when it fails. I mean, I'm a Manchester United fan, waking up on a Monday morning and seeing that we lost 7-0. It hurts. And it hurts when a DC project fails. It hurts when Black Adam got such bad reviews and such bad box office in the global box office. But I went to the cinema and I had a good time with it. So for me, it succeeded in the element of entertaining me. But going back to the Flash movie, they are telling anyone who wants to listen how excited they are about this film. And they're actually going to be screening this film at CinemaCon as well. So I think it's probably as good as they say it is. Now, whether people are going to go and see this movie and support this movie and whether this movie is successful or not is a different conversation because of the Ezra Miller factor. The question remains whether people will support this movie or not because of Ezra Miller's, alleged conduct. I don't care. I did care last year. I wanted him off the movie. I wanted this movie redone or shelved. But I'm not as passionate about the subject of Ezra Miller anymore. I've calmed down a bit because ultimately we're going down a new direction and probably Ezra Miller won't continue as the Flash. It will be very bold and brave by James Gunn and Peter Safran and David Zaslav if this movie is successful but still decide not to go forward with Ezra Miller's Barry Allen in the new DC universe. I don't think they're going to recast Barry Allen. I think they're actually going to give us maybe, a Bart Allen or a Wally West. I think there's so many versions, different versions of the Flash in DC Comics history. So you can say, well, in that timeline it was Barry Allen, now it's Wally, now it's Bart, or, whoever else you want to use. So I think at the end of the day, they won't recast Barry Allen. They'll just forget about Barry Allen and move on. They'll probably do things like that. Maybe Ezra Miller can cameo. Maybe they'll use Ezra Miller. But also, if this movie is $1 billion, if it makes a remarkable $2 billion, what do they do? Do they forget about Michael Keaton's Batman after people have sat down in a movie theatre to watch him? When things make money, this changes everything. I mean, I was talking about Michael B. Jordan's pitch for, Val Zod and Static Shock. Well, Michael B. Jordan's written and directed Creed 3 has made $100 million globally in its opening weekend. It only cost around 65 million to make. This film has made around 40 million clear profit. If I was Michael right now, I'd be knocking on Zaslav's door and saying, what about that Static Shock and Val Zod project that I pitched to Walter Hamada, that Walter Hamada actually greenlit? I'm very passionate on that subject because I believe that, a race-bended Clark Kent, while you ignore a talented black man's pitch for, Val Zod and Static Shock, is as racist as you can be. And, I discussed that yesterday and I don't want to repeat myself because I don't want to bore you guys about it yet again. But I'm very passionate about that and I will be talking about that a lot more. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Success changes everything. So if the Flash movie is so successful, surely there's elements of it they're going to have to go with. As I say, it'd be very, very brave of them to dispose of Ezra Miller if this film does well. Can they? That's the question. Can they? Again, it's all about box office. If you go and support this movie, despite Ezra Miller starring in it and being in most of the scenes of the movie, if you support this movie and make this movie money, well, that's giving them a free pass to continue with Ezra Miller. But I do believe that James Gunn wants to use other versions of The Flash, and he will. I think going forward, Ezra Miller would be used sparingly, but if this film's successful, it would be very difficult of them to move away from Ezra Miller. But we'll see what they do. You know, it's all about money. You know, they're a business. You know, if Ezra Miller ends up, you know, changing people's minds about him via his performance, and, you know, funnier things have happened, not just in, you know, entertainment, but in sport. Eric Cantona, former Manchester United player, Kung Fu kicked a supporter for abusing him. You know, everyone wanted him out of football. He came back and won the league and the FA Cup for Manchester United. Then everybody loved him. Basically, Ezra Miller is in the same disgraced position as Eric Cantona and other people, high-profile people, in the past. It's not over for Ezra Miller. If this film fails, it is over for Ezra Miller. So I do think it's as good as they say it is, but whether you, the public, go and support it is another questioning point. But if it's so good and people really, really like it, clearly they can't leave behind like Sasha Calle's Supergirl. What they're going to do about her is very important as well. I'm sure James Gunn wants to recast that role, but he can still recast an OG Supergirl, right? He can still have a different actress, a blonde Supergirl if he wants, but he can also use Sasha sparingly, right? But if she's cut from the end of the movie, then the decision's already been made already. So I want to change the subject to Arrowverse now. Former Arrow producer Mark Guggenheim, who's also written DC Comics before and written some of Bruce Timm's animation before as well, said he wasted his time on Arrowverse because he didn't get a phone call from James Gunn and Peter Safran so he could continue working with DC Studios. Mark is very, very upset about this because he and Greg Berlanti were developing a Green Lantern show, an ambitious Green Lantern show on HBO Max. It was going to span the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. You were going to have different characters. It was going to be huge. It was going to be expensive. Now, the Lantern HBO Max show that James Gunn is developing is going to be a lot cheaper. Not in a bad way, but it's already been compared to True Detective. So it's a smaller show, but it's still going to be very good, very awesome. And, you know, the expense won't be spared on that show. I agree with that Green Lantern being shelved because a Green Lantern show so expensive, a concept so expensive and so, you know, so big in its size should be on the, you know, movie theatre screen. It should be on the cinema screen. It shouldn't be on HBO Max because spending so much money on a Green Lantern show, where do you get the money back? You know, subscribers on HBO Max don't make you that much money. And all you've got next is your home release and your Blu-rays and your 4Ks. That's not like putting a Green Lantern core movie in the movie theatre. That's why they're making a cheaper, smaller Lanterns TV show on HBO Max. And this will lead to a Green Lantern core movie. I've said it before. I expect it to be in this Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters slate. So when they announce that slate at CinemaCon, which has been rumoured, I do expect there to be a Green Lantern movie announced, and I expect there to be a Wonder Woman movie announced. And talking about The Flash, there has been some Funko Pops and some merch for Wonder Woman in the Flash movie, although rumours said she was cut from the Flash movie. She could have been cut from the new timeline at the end of the Flash movie, but she still could be active somewhere in the actual movie. That's my theory about that. So Mark Guggenheim isn't happy. Let me tell you about something. Arrow seasons 1 and 2 and The Flash seasons 1 and 2 were outstanding. Arrowverse was the first connective DC franchise, and it was in the early days. It was done so well, but then they went woke and they got broke. They ruined Batwoman, one of the greatest DC characters in paperback form, before they made her woke in the comics. And they decided to go for the woke version. They fell out with the original actor, then they brought another actor in, who was playing an original character, Ryan Wilder, who didn't work either. We had an episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, where one of them tells a woman, don't worry, I know an island where you'll be safe, don't worry, there's no men there. So they went from, you know, their first 4 years, first 2 seasons of Arrow, first 2 seasons of The Flash that were outstanding, you know, live action comic book television, to what they did in the end. I remember people complaining to Stephen Amell on Facebook. He rudely responded, if you don't like it, don't watch it. I responded, okay then. And I didn't watch it again. And neither did many, many people. You see, the people in the entertainment industry, and I love Stephen Amell, very excited that he's coming back for the final season of The Flash. I think he's a great version of Green Arrow. Fantastic, the best in live action. And I've got a lot of time for Justin Hartley's Green Arrow on Smallville as well. But when you abuse your boss, the fans, the consumer, you know, you're our bitches, right? We're in charge. Without us, without our consumption, without our money, you don't have anything at the end of the day. And this is what these people don't understand. Did Mark Guggenheim actually waste his time developing Arrow? No, Mark, you didn't waste your time. You did a good job for the first 2 years of Arrow. It was some of the best DC live action material I had ever seen. In those first 2 seasons, did something I never thought anything could. It basically did more than Smallville did. Smallville did amazing stuff for DC, but Arrow was amazing. The pilot of Arrow was like Batman Begins for Green Arrow. It was amazing. So Mark Guggenheim, you didn't waste your time, but you can understand David Zaslav, James Gunn and Peter Safran not giving you a call because you allowed them to ruin that show. Because Berlanti is very extreme left. We know what he did to Tom Welling's Clark Kent in Crisis. He retired him as Superman and made him a house husband with a blue kryptonite ring, so he hasn't got his powers anymore. So if you think you're getting a call after all that, you're more deluded than I thought you were. So the Green Arrow show that Berlanti and Guggenheim were doing did sound very ambitious, but it was far too expensive for streaming. And there lies the problem. Another DC update for you. Joaquin Phoenix playing the Joker and in his Joker makeup has been seen on location shooting. So Joker Folie à Deux, Joker 2, the Joker sequel from Todd Phillips, is well into its production and filming schedules now. So you're going to see a lot of footage of them. Now, them doing their stuff. Now, I've seen his makeup. It looks fantastic. He looks fantastic. That's one movie that I'm really looking forward to. It's pretty obvious that comic book movies have had their day as a trend. I believe the future of comic book movies is movies like Joker and Joker Folie à Deux, The Batman and Batman 2, and the Penguin series on HBO Max. I've said before, controversially, that I think the Penguin series should have been one movie and should have been released on movie theatres, if you ask me. That's just my opinion. Obviously, they want stuff on HBO Max, but they don't want films, as I explained to you yesterday. But I think it's the auteur kind of vision of DC and comics in general that's going to do really well. I don't think there's much money to be made anymore from the interconnected, continuing franchise like the MCU. Now, we know that James Gunn's attempting to do that as well. I think what James Gunn's doing will be kind of moderately successful, but I don't think it will be as successful financially as the MCU was. People are bored with interconnected franchises. People are bored of bags of fresh air. This is why people celebrate Denis Villeneuve's Dune and Todd Phillips' Joker and Matt Reeves' The Batman. People are now celebrating the auteur. People are fed up with overly stuffed, CGI in movies. They want auteur directors to put as much as they can in the camera and only add CGI when they can't do it physically on camera. So I think it's directors like Christopher Nolan and Todd Phillips and Denis Villeneuve and Matt Reeves that are going to be celebrated. So I think DC Elseworlds will make more money than DC Universe. This is where I think the future is. So superhero movies will not be a trend anymore. And I think for you to make lots of money in movies, you're really going to have to be original and do something new, or the audience and the consumer are going to reject you. So people went to see Creed 3 and they saw something original. It's always sad for someone who's been an icon like Sylvester Stallone. He walked out of the third movie and expected it probably to fail and that it really needed him to be successful, and it didn't. Because Michael B. Jordan is class. Michael B. Jordan is a very talented young man, and we've already seen the passing of the torch. I know this is a DC Universe Daily, but I'm just giving you examples of what audiences want today. So, you know, you've done the passing over of the torch from Rocky to, you know, Adonis Creed, and it's worked. So now you don't really need Stallone, sadly, because Sylvester Stallone's a pioneer. Sylvester Stallone invented the name Creed, invented the Rocky franchise. The Rocky franchise is one of my favourite movie franchises of all time. And it's done more for me emotionally and in my life as someone who's a dreamer and had my own dreams and, you know, has had his own Cinderella story. What Stallone did is more impactful than the MCU has ever done. But he never owned his creation. George Lucas owned his creation and sold it to Disney and made a lot of money of it. He was always in charge of his own destiny. Stallone wasn't, and that's really the issue there. But what I'm trying to say, something like Creed 3 is so original. You know, the fighting sequences are a lot more robust. You know, this is Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, and he's done a good job. And that's why I want Michael B. Jordan involved in the future of DC. Luckily for us, Michael is a big DC fan as well. So I think it's not the, you know, the bland Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania films and the Shazam movies that are going to make money in the future. It's a singular vision from a director. Someone like Zack Snyder. Today, I think his movies would have made a lot more money and would have been respected if they were part of a DC Elseworld instead of being masqueraded as some kind of interconnected franchise for the mainstream audience. And that's why they didn't do so well. That's why there was a divisive response to his movies. Put them as part of a DC Elseworld and that attitude will change. So I think this is where the money is. So you're going to see the MCU just fail and fail because people are done with all that now. There's no interest in that anymore. It's been done. It's been done and done to death. People want to feel an individual movie experience. They don't want to worry about what's going to happen 5 movies down the road. The time of just the consumer being happy with an Easter egg or this or that, but a very basic, bland movie is gone. People pay a lot of money to buy their Ice Blast and their sweets and their movie tickets, especially in America. It's very expensive out there to go and see a movie. So they're not going to waste money. And we've got the cost of living crisis globally as well now. So when people go and see a movie, it's going to be one that they know they're going to enjoy. They know they're going to enjoy the Batman 2 and Joker, Folie à Deux. You know, they know that they're going to go and enjoy, you know, Keanu Reeves' Constantine 2 because there will be an effort made to do something unique and special. But when they go and see a movie that's part of some kind of, you know, connected universe, they know it's one of many chapters that ultimately doesn't matter apart from the Easter eggs, apart from, you know, continuing that story. And I think the future of film in general is directorial auteurs with a unique vision. And I think that's where we're going to be going with that in the future. And I don't think the MCU have got a hope in hell in keeping the success they've had. It's done. There's very, very little to be excited for in the MCU. Now, what's going in James Gunn's and Peter Safran's favour, that they're attempting to do something new. They're attempting to tell a continued story, but by making every film as interesting as the next one and not going through the motions. You've got to make an effort for films to make money. Whether it's Top Gun Maverick or Baz Luhrmann's Elvis Presley, these are the type of movies people want to see again. These are the type of movies that people want to consume in cinemas anymore. They're done with the boring and the bland movies of the MCU. So if you can get directors like Baz Luhrmann, like the vision of Tom Cruise for Top Gun Maverick in the superhero genre, then superheroes will continue to do well. And superhero movies are not really making $1 billion anymore. But we'll see how these Elseworld movies do over at DC. So I think in the future there's more chance of DC CBMs doing better in the box office than the Marvel CBMs. Even something like Deadpool 3, where the audience is very, very excited for it. People are done being sold a lemon, being told, oh, you can have Hugh Jackman back. Oh, you can have Sir Ian McKellen and Sir Patrick Stewart back. People want more. So when you give them more and you give them a director that they can trust with a vision, they will make that movie money. The movie industry is in a lot of trouble, but CBMs are no longer the trend. They've had their day. It's like the Western movies. They had the day. They were a trend. And when there's a trend, Hollywood copy that trend all over. And they don't stop with that trend until they make flop after flop after flop. They don't listen. They don't listen until it's too late. And so, as I say, CBMs and comic book movies and TV shows, it's not a trend anymore. But there'll always be, don't worry, there'll always be superhero movies and superhero content, just not as much. Now that is a very, very good thing, boys and girls, because that means we only get the good stuff. And I think that Joker, Todd Phillips and Matt Reeves, they're good people. They're all Tours. You want people like that making comic book movies. And I think James Gunn himself has been speaking about boring and bland comic book movies. So I believe he's going to make the effort to make something special. What's really good about DC going forward, you've got this interconnected franchise DC Universe, but you've also got, as I say, people like Matt Reeves and Todd Phillips doing something unique. And I hope we can get more and more DC Elseworlds movies. So it looks like we are getting Constantine 2 from Keanu Reeves. That's exciting. That will be 3 DC Elseworlds movies to look forward to. And I can promise you something. I'll wager you that those 3 DC Elseworld movies will make a lot more money than anything from James Gunn's DC Universe. And I'm not saying they're going to flop. They'll make money. They'll make money, no question. But I think that what Zaslav is going to see and be very interested in is how people are more interested in Joker Folie à Deux and, Batman 2 from Matt Reeves and Constantine 2. They're more exciting projects for the audience because they know that they're going to get a divine vision. And there's no one holding those people back. They can do whatever they want because it doesn't interfere with a vision. That's what I'm saying. If Snyder was part of a DC Elseworlds back in 2013 going forward, nobody would have interfered with his work because it is about the art in DC Elseworlds. James Gunn said it himself. There'll be a higher kind of, green lighting process for DC Elseworlds than there is for DC Universe, which means you don't have to be individually artistic to make a DC Elseworlds film. It's part of a chapter. But when you're doing DC, that's DC Universe. But when you're doing DC Elseworlds, that's unique. That's an auteur. And, that's very interesting to me because I do think the superhero movie trend is over. But just like when I was a kid with Superman the movie and Superman 2 and Superman 3 and Superman 4, you're still going to get good CBMs. I'm not saying Superman 4 is a good CBM, but we even got Batman 89, Batman 92, and then we got Nolan's Batman trilogy when superheroes kind of were just starting to be a trend. And he got to do his own unique vision as well. So I think there's a great future for CBMs, but I think we're in a very exciting time in cinema again where we get the best CBMs directed and written by the best auteurs, but we also get the Top Gun Mavericks. We also get the Creed 3s. We also get the Dune movies as well. And I think that's very, very important in terms of if you love film, if you love escapism, if you love seeing a good piece of art, that we get, you know, lots of different ideas and not just superheroes, because that has destroyed cinema, my friends. This has been Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.